All right, well, it's Megabass weekend. Megabass registration going on right over there in back. How many people are fishing Megabass? About half the crowd here. Good, good, good. So, there's kind of two different things going on fishing-wise. If you guys watched the live stream last night for Top Baits, you kind of heard me refer to that. There's two different kinds of fish, in my opinion, to catch on this lake right now. I think the really offshore main lake, suspended, or creek channel deal, that's done. That, for me, that's done. What about you?
I haven't caught a fish deeper than like 8 foot.
Yeah, by the way, Cord Huckins is joining me tonight. He's been guiding here for the last year. Travels and fishes the BFLs and some other tournament circuits. And good guy. Spends a lot of time on the water, so he's got a lot of experience and knowledge. You've got fish that have already been, we've actually had spawning bass on Lake Fork for 3 or 4 weeks. Does everybody know that? We've had some spawning bass on Lake Fork for several weeks now. Since the new moon in early March, we had just enough warmth then to get a few spawning. And of course, regardless of how cold the water is or whatever, when you get a full moon in March, some are going to go to the bank. I mean, that's just going to happen. So it's going to be interesting this weekend, because I think what's going to happen is there's going to be more fish going to the shallow pockets and the spawning areas. And right now, there's still a lot of fish staging. I mean, a lot of fish are staging right now. The majority of them have been staging, and primarily we get to this deal every spring. It happens every year on this lake. This pattern's gotten a lot of exposure the last few years, but we get to every spring and we have the staging fish they get on the shallow point deal, man. And they don't just do it here. In fact, there's a guy here tonight. I had no idea John was going to be here tonight, but me and him practiced for a tournament on Toledo Bend last February and found the exact same pattern there. It's a shallow point, hard spot, rock, shell, whatever you can find, just something hard and clean on windblown points, and there's fish there on those every day. You may run several of them and not get bit if your timing's not right, but boy, when you do, it can be the right ones, and a lot of them. That's primarily what the best bite has probably been this week, in my opinion. But with this tournament coming up Sunday, I think there's going to be a lot of these fish running into the pockets, because man, they're wanting to do their thing. The dogwoods are finally blooming all over the place everywhere you look. Y'all know that means bass are spawning when that happens. And now we've got a situation where hey, it got to 80 degrees today, y'all. First day, and I mean, maybe all year, right?
Yeah.
First day of 2022 at 80 degrees was today, and it's going to get a little bit warmer tomorrow and a little bit warmer on Sunday when we have this tournament. So I think there's going to be a lot of these fish running to the shallow water. Cord, I know you've been primarily fishing some of that shallow pocket water, those early movers. So how about you just go ahead and tell us how you've been catching them, bud?
It has been really slow, and it's been ups and lows. Or ups and downs. It's feast or famine right now.
Ups and lows works. I like ups and lows. It's a new thing.
It's the way it comes.
Hell, say it enough. We'll put it on a t-shirt and sell some.
But no, I've been pretty much staying really shallow. I haven't had much luck catching anything deeper than probably about 8 foot. I mean, I'll see some like suspended fish, but I can't get none of them to commit. And I know some guys, that's how they're catching them. But I'm just not good enough yet, I don't guess. But I've been pretty much staying shallow.
But I know you, dude. You're from Oklahoma, and you're kind of a dirty water dauber. You know, that's what I like to call them Oklahoma guys. Them Oklahoma boys, they flip their jigs all wrong. You know what I mean? No, they get up in it. You're used to fishing dirty water and high water, river systems, stuff like that. So you get up in that dirty water and you get to pitching and flipping, and you kind of finesse some fish out of there on tougher fisheries. Being a tournament guy, you're also used to finesse fishing, because that's a big aspect of tournament fishing. So that's kind of more in your wheelhouse. So
yeah, and primarily the shallow part of it, and it's been back and forth in some of those pockets. Like you'll go about a week where that dirtier water, like on the north ends and stuff, does better, and then one day they just shut off, and you go find the cooler, cleaner water, and you'll start catching them. And they've been just going real back and forth. But both of my big fish so far this year have come in 2 foot or less of water.
Yeah.
Dock related on top of that.
They're the ones that are shallow, guys, are really shallow. Like, I think a lot of people miss the boat at times in that shallow water because they don't go shallow enough. So when those fish, those early movers especially, when they pull in there, they're looking for warm water. That warmest water, I mean, they're pushing the boundaries of what is okay to spawn in water temperature wise, right? So some of the main lake is 55, 56, 58, 59 at times. Well, that's pushing like 58, 59 is about the lower limits of when fish are gonna wanna spawn. So those fish are pushing those boundaries. So they're looking for the warmest water. When you have a day like this, the warmest water is gonna be the shallowest water. So they are going to get back in areas where you got to jack your trolling motor all the way up and keep pushing, and then make as far of a cast as you can into what seems like inches of water at times. There'll be some big fish in there. And especially for this tournament for 2-pounders, man, they'll get so far back there you can't really access them at times sometimes. But even the bigger ones, I mean, even an over will get in less than a foot of water when they're an early mover and spawner like these early spawners are. Yeah. They're in dirty water, so visibility, they're not, you know, if the water was clear, they probably wouldn't get that shallow. But they're in dirtier water typically. Yeah. They're going to the warmest water. I mean, they will get, I mean, I've literally seen them, every time they wiggle, you see their fins stick out a little bit. They've been so shallow before. I would say this time of year, normally this is happening in February. Like, y'all realize the water column is in like late February, maybe the first day of March right now. It's really strange. We're really late this year with what's happening. So what are we using to catch them? How are we catching them?
Soft plastics and jigs mainly.
Soft plastics and jigs.
Yeah, I pretty much threw the kitchen sink out.
You've been fishing too many tournaments. You're trying to be secretive, dog. We can't do that around here. You got to tell everybody everything.
Man,
like, man, we do catching them in the water. Caught them right in the mouth. That's where I caught them. Yeah.
Caught them on the trees.
Come on now. Open up. Let me know what baits we using.
Black and blue Senko and a black and blue jig.
Black and blue Senko and a black and blue jig.
And then if the water gets a little cleaner, I'll start to go to like a June bug or a green pumpkin. But
have you tried old methylate yet? Because I know you like that.
I have thrown the methylate back in first week of March. We caught 2 or 3 little buck bass up shallow, and I think I had one more the other day on a trip, and I finally cut it off and started throwing like a regular, just wacky rig, slightly weighted, and that seems to get a few more bites. I don't know if y'all even know what a tiny child rig is. Have you ever seen that?
No, that sounds weird. I don't know.
It's about the goofiest.
Hold on, no. Are we fixing to get arrested for this?
No, this is like children pond fishing technique.
Okay.
It's just a 5-6 inch Senko, and you just like weightless Texas rig it.
Yeah.
You cut some of your tail off, and you take a nail weight, or like one of those half moon weights. You stick in the butt of it, and it stands perfectly straight up and down.
Okay.
And it falls right through the cover and everything really close. So all those root systems and stuff we're fishing in that 3 to 4, 5 foot of water, it just drops right in, right out, right in, right out.
I don't want to know what website you had to go to find the tiny child rig. I know that.
Pretty sure it's Wired to Fish like 2 years ago.
It's kind of like an offshoot of the Nico rig, so to speak, a little bit.
Yeah, it's just like a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, instead of having the open hook, like I said, it's Texas rig, and it literally just falls straight like a bullet, and you can really flip it actually pretty well for as light as it is. Yeah.
Now on your regular black and blue Senko, are we wacky in that, or are we fishing at weightless Texas rig?
I've been kind of mixing it up. Like some days they want it Texas rigged, or the way it'll glide a little bit more, and then some days it's like you got to let it almost hit the bottom. I mean, you got to be like as slow and methodical with it. You know, sometimes
really
you can working it really slow, but I mean it's like hit the bottom, work it up 2 foot, let it fall. Yeah. And then it's been a mushy bite. Like they'll just sit there and hold it. You know, like we caught a 826 like 2 mornings ago, and he thought he hooked up just a stick or something. And before I could get the net,
lethargic.
He said it just bent and just sat there. He's pulled on it and it would hardly move, so he just set the hook and then just boat flipped that sucker and was like, I'm done with it.
Yeah,
pretty much.
How about that? That works out. Yeah, just so everybody knows, on the weightless Texas rig, people watching on camera may not know. We're talking about just taking I use the 6 cent stout hooks that I use, those EWG hooks. They got a really heavy gauge, so I actually use a 3/0 on my weightless Texas rig. I used to use like a 4/0 or 5/0 in other hook brands. But we're just taking an extra wide gap hook and just rigging it like you would a Texas rig, but with no weight at all. And what that does is that makes that bait fall straight horizontal with that hook in it. It just falls straight down, has a little shimmy. But when you twitch it, it's almost like fishing a jerkbait.
Yeah.
You twitch it, it goes. I mean, you can kind of make it, you just pop the slack. You don't want to actually pull the slack out and pull through the slack, but just pop the slack. It'll kind of dart around and do some different things and then slowly fall. So that's a good way to do it.
It's a very, very slow way to fish, and it's not as fun as, ripping a rattle trap around, but.
I'd rather wind them. I'd rather wind them for sure. But one thing about it is, on Lake Fork, and we actually talked about this a couple months ago, you kind of have a little pattern that happens like every year. It's when you get to January, it's jig season. And you throw a jig till they quit biting a jig. Then you get off that jig deal and you start throwing a chatterbait or a rattle trap, or this year is more of a square bill thing because of the lake conditions, or maybe a spinnerbait at times, but really those other 3. And then once that fades, you pick that Senko up. And then by the time the Senko fades, you're looking at them on beds everywhere you want to look at them. So that kind of deal happens every year. That Senko bite happens every year. Right after the jig bite comes the winding bite, and right after the winding bite comes the Senko bite. If you think about what these fish are doing, when it's cold, and they're not moving up yet. They're down in the bottom of a creek, so we're catching them on a jig. Then they get out of that and they're still in pre-spawn, but they're kind of getting shallower on some flats as we get some warming trends. You catch them on winding baits. Then while they're on those flats, they'll kind of shut down for a little bit before they spawn. And so if they shut down and they go slow, you go slow, right? When they move, you move. When they don't, you don't. And so you slow down with that Cinco, and that's how you catch them till you look at them on beds. Now, what also happens is, as we saw when the Best Pro Tour was here, those guys had two different kinds of fish. They had some guys, main lake suspended timber fish.
Yeah.
Now what's happened to all those main lake suspended timber fish is what happens every year, like we talked about a minute ago. That's the shallow point deal. Those fish get off that suspended timber out in open water and they pull up on these shallow points to feed. And they still suspend out there at times, but when they want to really feed, they're going to pull up on these shallow points is what they're going to do. Hey, kid coming in hot.
I've seen a lot of those.
Yeah, we got the child molester rig and talking about kids coming in hot. We're going to jail. Guaranteed we're going to jail tonight, buddy.
Just a Cinco.
Just a Cinco.
But no, like I've seen a lot of good suspended fish in the creek channels, you know, but like with those big main lake points.
Yeah.
And let them swing in down one bank on the nose of it, kind of out on top of and even in front.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of my better quality fish, and they're moving a lot, and they're really hard to
Doesn't this guy know we're trying to do a seminar? With his big diesel truck backing in his boat.
Fixing to pull right down there by you to get straight.
Yeah, probably so. That engine's gonna be right. He's gonna be on camera in a second.
No, he's just gonna park crooked.
That'd be fine too. That's what I'd do. Shallow point deal. How to catch those fish? Probably the easiest way to catch them is Carolina rig. That's the simplest way. It's pretty darn effective, and it catches really big fish at times. I mean, I think everybody wants to throw big swim baits. You know, like these are kind of some of the smaller ones, but everybody wants to throw big line through swim baits and glide baits on these shallow points. And man, that can work, and that's working right now. But probably the way to catch more fish and be more consistent, in my opinion, Carolina rig creature bait. I'm using the hog wallet from 6 cents. John, you still using that? Hog wallet bait?
Not a whole lot, right?
Not a whole lot? No. Okay. Yeah, hog wallet from 6 cents. A brush hog for years before was good. A lizard is good. You know, lizard at times is the deal. But just, you know, a little bit bigger, a little bit longer profile creature bait on a Carolina rig is probably the easiest way to be consistent on those shallow points. And what it'll do is it'll, you know, that shallow point deal is a timing deal like we spoke about in the very beginning. It's, if you pull up on the right one at the right time, and you throw a swim bait or a square bill across there, you catch every fish in there at the right time. But man, you can go a whole day and never get your timing right on one of those points. Look here, he couldn't do it. He couldn't stay cooking. He couldn't stay cooking. He had to straighten it up. How about that?
Now he knows we're all looking at it.
Get it in there tight, brother. Get it in there tight. There you go. Now he's better. He's gonna get that motor in the bottom of his bed here in a minute.
Pretty close to it.
Yeah, boy. So, forgot what I was saying. Oh, the timing on those shallow points. What a Carolina rig does, though, it makes it to where you don't have to have that perfect timing. If there's fish anywhere on it or around it, they will still bite that Carolina rig, because all a Carolina rig is a way to present a weightless plastic in the wind, essentially. I mean, on these shallow point deals, we're fishing with the windiest points we can. That's something else we need to talk about. You want all the wind on this deal. Like you want your boat drowning. I don't know if you can drown a boat, but you want to try. But the Carolina rig just opens that window up and makes it easier to catch those fish that aren't as active. So if you got a fish that's just up there solo, so he's not really competitive, you probably catch him on that Carolina rig. It's a weightless plastic. That 1 ounce weight acts as an anchor in all that wind, and that Carolina rig, that bait's just back there fluttering behind it as if it were a completely weightless plastic, just like a Cinco or a fluke or anything else. I know a lot of times we use a fluke, an impact shad or a fluke on those Carolina rigs on these shallow points. So it's probably the way to be most consistent. The wind, you want the wind rocking these points, and that's an important aspect of this deal. The harder that wind's blowing in there, a lot of times the better they're going to bite. And I like, if the point is shaped like this, I want the wind blowing straight into it as my favorite. The harder it's blowing into it, the more plankton it's blowing up on top of that shelf, the more bait fish are going to tend to gather on top of that shelf. Obviously, we know where that leads. Second, I'll take a crosswind. If it's coming at this angle or this angle, I'll still fish that point with this. When that point shaped like this and that wind's blowing this way, those are the points I don't go to on a given day. Does everybody understand what I'm saying there? If that wind is blowing away from the tip of that point, I don't usually even bother hitting those. Now, if I've been on fish on those for 3 or 4 days in a row or whatever, I'm gonna have a hard time not going there at least checking it, no matter what the wind does. But oftentimes you're gonna go up there and catch nothing when the wind blows away from the point. Blowing into it is best. Run those first, and then crosswind is acceptable. Does everybody know what to look for on these shallow points? You know, we all have these modern electronics that have these, Lowrance and Humminbird both have the adjustable mapping where you can kind of move the lake level around on them to see what's what. Hey, I would highly encourage you to use that to find these shallow points. Because at full pool, we all kind of know where the points are on Lake Fork right now. Yep. But this year, I'm kind of having to start from scratch. Because some of those points that run out to 4 or 5 foot real good, well, now they're starting at 1 foot below, and they're steep after that. So they're not very good right now, some of the traditional points. And then some of them do extend on out a long ways and are good. And then there's some points that I never fished before that are steep from 1 to 5 foot, but from 5 to 10 foot normally they're real flat, and now they're in the zone. You know, they're 1 to 4 foot in good shape, and that's what you want. So I'm really having to adjust some of the points that I run. It's not, you know, it's a hard thing to do. One of the hardest things I think in fishing is when you fish the same lake all the time for years, man, you get stuck in your ways. You're like, well, we're gonna run over here to this point, we're gonna run over here to Chicken Ridge, we're gonna run over here to Bird Dog, or whatever you call your different spots, you know. Donkey Ditch, whatever it is. Yeah. Hey, I got a spot out here called Donkey Ditch. When it's got grass in it, y'all, there's some donkeys in there. When Donkey Ditch has grass in it, y'all come with me. You won't be laughing about it, I'm serious. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Not what I heard. Come across. All right, move along. All right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one to move on from there a little bit. He got me good.
We're going to replay that.
But anyways, you know, you get in the habit of, YouTube will have a ball with that one. You get in the habit of just running the same spots every day when you fish out here. I've been guiding for 7 years, fishing this lake. It's my home lake for 12, 13 years now, about 12 and a half years now. So you get in the habit of you just run your spots. Well, when the lake changes levels on the shallow point deal, it's so important to have the right shape on those shallow points that you can't do that anymore. It's been an interesting year this year. It's forced me to start over and look at new creek channels during the winter and look at new spawning areas. And, you know, absolutely. It's forced me to kind of, I'm starting over a little bit, you know, as far as locations go. And I don't think that's bad. I think it's good. I think it makes you a better fisherman. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, you
learn something new about it. You know, I mean, it tells you something a little bit different about the lake. You know, I bet I'm only able to fish half of what my good stuff was last year.
Right.
You know, the half of them right now they're just like do nothing banks. You know, it's just sand flat for 100 yards. You know.
Right.
So yeah, it's really opened my eyes to look a little bit deeper, you know, going places I, you know, normally just wouldn't go, or it wasn't really my cup of tea. And then now it's like, I kind of actually like fishing over here now.
Right. And you know, you're a little more used to that because you travel around the country to some extent fishing these tournaments regionally anyway. And so, I mean, you're constantly seeing new water. Well, I'm telling you guys, that's one of the hardest things in the world is when you see the same water every day for years and you're like, you kind of know, you got them figured out. You know, you've been going to the same creek channel or flat or whatever for years and catching them, then all of a sudden that's taken out of play. You're like, well, what am I supposed to do from 9 to 11? I normally fish right here, you know. And I think a lot of the guides out here fall into that trap, you know. But it's been
a lot of your good stretches are not good stretches anymore. It's like, man, I wish that was, you know, that had water on it. It was a good go-to. But
now, that being said about the Carolina rig being the easiest way to catch them, square bill is really good too. Square bill is probably my favorite way to fish those points because I can cover so many of them so fast. I can just get up there, wind around all the different angles, boom, bounce to the next one. More so a little bit later in the year when things get really warmed up and the fish get more active, it's more so effective then. But I really think the proper way to fish that shallow point deal is to run and gun. Yeah. To fish as many of them as you can until you run into the train wreck and then milk that train wreck for all you got. That, in my opinion, that's the right way to do it. It's not always feasible when it's cold. Yeah. It doesn't always work when it's cold. But I think the way that everybody wants to know how to fish these shallow points is with big swim baits, which I used to do quite a bit of. I don't do near as much. Once you're guiding, people want to get bites. And when you're filming, you got to get bites. Or, I mean, who's going to watch you make a video for 20 minutes of you casting, you know, of It probably wouldn't be very exciting, but
I could drive my boat really fast.
Yeah.
Some good like sunset
we
footage.
could make some good videos on these windy days of boat drives. So we'll tell you that. There'll be some interesting footage in some of that.
Hey, the color this time of year, is there a color that matters?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mine's transitioned.
I think color always matters to some degree. It's pretty simple. On what technique are you asking about? Just everything in general, or?
Well, the shallow points you're running,
Yeah, I'm gonna go shad on that, and a whiter colored shad. I don't want translucent. I don't want gray. I don't want anything too realistic. I actually want a good bit of white in the bait on a crankbait, and the reason why is those shad are real pale in colder water. In cooler water, those shad are pale colored. They're real whitish colored this time of year. And then also, when you're fishing these wind-rocked points, especially in the condition the lake's in right now, the water's gonna be turned up a little bit when the wind's rocking in there. It's gonna be a little dirty. So that white's gonna help those fish see it a little better than a more realistic or translucent type of shad pattern would be. So on a square bill for me, I'm throwing a whitish shad pattern. May even go to a chartreuse.
Yeah.
Chartreuse and black square bill has been real good. Now that deal's kind of faded and gone to white now.
Yeah,
but
it has.
a week or two ago, a couple weeks before that, basically after the Bass Pro Tour left till about a week ago or so, the chartreuse black back was kind of the color you want to throw. I was throwing one, y'all know my Tiger Truce color. It's chartreuse and neon orange on top, chartreuse on the belly. I was throwing that a lot until this week, really. Now we've kind of gone over to the white stuff. When they started pulling up on those shallow points the way they did, the white kind of took over for me. But the square bill bite's not like just killer yet. I think it's still a little too cold for those fish to just jump all over the square bill deal on the shallow points.
The trap's been more of a deal than the square bill has, for me anyhow.
Well, the square bill was good for me around wood and pockets, but on the shallow point deal, it's been the Carolina rig more than anything, just to go get bites. And then we have thrown some big swim baits. We have got some bites on some big swim baits, and I know some other guys have as well around the lake. And that, I mean, we're talking about big baits, guys, big glide baits, 7 to 9 inch glide baits, 7 to 9 inch line through swim baits. You can throw a weedless bait up there, but you really don't need to. And on a line through, your hookup ratio and your landing ratio goes through the roof. The reason why that is, I'll pass these around. But these are two different line throughs. One is the Poacher, which to be honest with you right now, I'm not using on these shallow points. It's a little smaller line through. But this Felon, which is this bigger one, that's my favorite line through. It has the best action in my opinion, and I don't say that because I like the way it looks when it swims in the water. I say it has the best action because it gets this line, the Felon line through gets more bites than any line through I've ever thrown. And I've thrown a bunch of different ones. But the Felon gets more numbers of bites than anything I've ever thrown. And Lord knows when you're throwing something this big, there's not a fish too big to eat that, right? I think sometimes swimbait guys get a little caught up in trying to throw the biggest swimbait they can, which I understand, like the thought process and the principle and thinking behind it. What I don't understand is, so you're telling me that 12-pounder will bite that 9-inch swim bait, but he won't bite that 6-inch one? Yeah, he's gonna bite that 6-inch one too. But the 3-pound under might take a swipe at this. You know what I mean? As well as the 11-pound over. So it just kind of opens up the variety of fish that I can get to bite. You know, you're throwing a big swim bait, you're taking away some bites from some fish already when you do that. Why are we gonna try and take them all away other than one? It's like some of these swim bait guys, it's like they get off on, I'm only gonna get one bite. Why? How about you throw something to get that one big bite and get some other bites too? It's fun to catch fish. You know, hey, in case you swim bait guys didn't know back behind the camera, it is fun to catch a lot of fish. Like, I don't know, so what they're thinking sometimes. Swim bait guys, I call them the fishing hippies. They're a little weird, man. They're different, some of these swim bait guys. But anyway, pass these around and I'll let you guys take a look at them. And here you go. Pass those around and take a look at them. So as you can see, it comes with a treble hook. And if you look at that bait, there's an insert going through it, a little tube that your line goes through. The hook hooks it. You run the line all the way through it. You tie the hook, and then the hook just sets in the belly. You actually hook the hook, one of the trebles, in the belly, and the hook just sits there. Now, the key component to this is when a bass bites it, that swim bait is going to shoot up the line. So when a bass bites it, you set the hook, that swim bait slides way up the line. Now you have nothing but a weightless, naked treble hook in that fish's mouth. You can just pass it down that way, wherever. What that does is it takes away all the leverage for a fish to throw the bait. A fish can't throw a line through. I mean, I don't know that I've ever lost a fish like came unhooked on a line through. I don't think I have, honestly. It just, with no leverage and a big treble hook in their mouth and you're throwing it on a pretty big rod, Like you're gonna drive the hook in them, even if you just pull into it with that just treble hook, and they just don't come off. There's no leverage whatsoever with that line through when it slides up the line. So really, really good way to know when you hook a big one that unless he breaks your line, you're gonna land it, you know? What do you think? You throw a line through as much?
Not this year. I don't like. I feel like it's still a little too early. I mean, for me,
It just started this week for me.
Yeah.
Last couple days, really.
I know some guys that have been throwing some big swim baits, and I've been seeing a few fish caught, but I haven't been able to get it to work, and it may be because I tried to force feed him it a couple weeks ago to try to get him going.
And then you bail.
Yeah, and then you bail
Because
on
you
it,
force feed them and it doesn't work out. Then you're like, well, screw that. I'm going on something else.
Yeah, that's essentially like where we're at now. Now, probably the next 2 days, I'll probably try to spend some time doing that, and like even, you know, maybe throw like some of those 6-inch glide baits kind of in the backs of the creeks and stuff. You know, just to try to draw the little bit better bite. You know, because that's what some guys want. So.
Yep, a glide bait is a good way too. So a glide bait is another one that works really well. They are going to have a lot of leverage to throw your bait with a glide bait, so your setup's real important. And I think a lot of people run a rod that's too heavy on a glide bait because they want to be able to cast it easy. Because a glide bait can weigh 4 or 5 ounces plus at times, and guys want to be able to cast it easy. Suck it up and deal with a little bit more tip on the end of your rod when you're casting that glide bait, because at the end of the day, that's still a treble hook bait, and they have a 4 ounces worth of leverage to rip that hook out and throw it. So you really need a rod that has a lot of shock absorption. One other thing I do with the glide bait is I throw it on monofilament. Give me even more stretch, more shock absorption. When you bow up on a big 7, 8, 9 pound fish on monofilament, there is a lot of stretch that occurs on that line. So when that fish is jumping and shaking his head, that monofilament acts as an extra shock absorber with the stretch it has in it. It'll also make your knot more durable having the stretch in the line, because a fluorocarbon line on a 4 ounce bait, when you're slinging it all day, slinging it, every time you do that, it snaps that line every time you cast it. And that just stretches that knot, stresses that knot, stresses that knot. So when you're doing that with fluorocarbon, it can eventually cut itself. And you can sometimes make a cast and watch your $100 glide bait go over that roof. So monofilament to me is really important on glide bait. Now I'm throwing 25-pound monofilament. I'm throwing big line, you know, and I'm going Berkeley big game, that old gnarly tough stuff, 25-pound test is what I'm using.
$5.99 at Walmart.
$5.99 at Walmart, baby. Yes, sir.
On your, go back to Carolina rig, you using traditional long leader or a shorter one?
Yeah, so on a Carolina rig, that's a personal preference deal. But the deal is, the shorter your leader, okay, the shorter your leader, the less action your bait has. The longer your leader, the more action your bait has. I'm typically a middle of the road guy. I'm a 3 foot, maybe a 4 foot at times. Man, every once in a while I'll venture out and run a 5 foot leader. But I know a lot of guys out here that are throwing a 6 foot leader and swearing by it, you know, swearing by it. Man, I feel funky setting the hook on a Carolina rig when the leader's up. A Carolina rig is kind of awkward to set the hook on and land a fish anyway, with that 1 ounce weight swinging around when you're trying to boat flip them, you know. Yeah. It's kind of a weird deal, ain't it? A little awkward anyway. When you've got it 4, 5, 6 foot up the line, it feels really weird to me. You know, because now I'm trying to boat flip a fish, and I got 6 foot of line, I got 7 foot of line out, right? Because I can't reel past the weight. What did Gerald Swindle say? That Luke Bryan song called Knocking Boots, I'll call it Knocking Out Guides. Because everybody listens to Luke Bryan reels a Carolina rig weight up to the tip. They knock out the guide. Yeah.
So that's why all your roads are broken.
Yeah, that and customers stepping on them.
Yeah, ain't no joke.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of a middle of the road guy. I run between a 3 and 4 foot leader, usually tops. Usually minimum. I mean, that's kind of it. That's what I run. When I'm fishing the Carolina rig on the main lake, now I do, where Cord is fishing, something I really like to do is I like to take what used to be called a split shot rig. We used to take a couple split shots. Now, I just take a bobber stop and an 1/8 ounce tungsten, and I run that bobber stop about 18 inches up the line, and I fish a little finesse Carolina rig with, you know, a hog wallow or a lizard or Cinco at times, whatever. But just a little finesse Carolina rig. I'll do that in that shallow water area where I think they're spawning, but I don't really know where, and I just kind of got to cover that flat. I love to do that and just slowly drag it around that flat. I think it's a really effective way to get bit. Glide baits. Rod's important on a glide bait. So a long rod is going to help you, but like I said, let's not get it too heavy. Really, a kind of a deep cranking rod is probably, to me, the best rod to throw on a glide bait. So you need something 7'10" to 8 foot, 7'9" to 8 foot.
Yeah.
But it's going to have to, I mean, you could even throw like a glass cranking rod on a glide bait, and I think it'd be a good call. Because those deep crankbait rods are designed to be able to throw a big bait, but bend a lot whenever you hook up. If you think about it, other than a glide bait, what is the bait that has the most weight and most leverage for a fish to throw with a treble hook attached to it? A deep diving crankbait, a 10XD, right? So that rod is designed to pick those fish and pin them and hold them on a deep diving crankbait. It's going to work the same for a glide bait. They're both really heavy baits with treble hooks that are attached to them. So I kind of like my deep crankbait rod, it's called an 8 foot heavy, but it's got a moderate tip. So the bottom of it's stout, but the top of it's bendy. And it's a Lux Series rod from 6 Cents that they make, and that's what I use for my glide baits as well. And I think it's the right one. So, any questions about swim bait fishing or anything like that?
On the shallow points, I know you talked about in the past the birds.
Yeah, loons, yeah, they're here, they're present, and I tell you what, especially with Lake Fork being low and having to find new areas, they help a lot. Now, unfortunately, you can't run around the whole lake like we usually do. Usually, I mean, listen, there's times when I've done this deal, get the boat barely on plane and just cruise around until I see some loons or some herons, and then I'll pull up right there. Can't do that right now. You might hit a stump, you might hit a whole field of stumps. Hell, you might run into a sandbar out there right now, the way the lake's so low. Some of these points extended out, but yeah, if you're looking around for loons, loons are definitely always going to be a great clue. In fact, when we did it last year on Toledo Bend, that was our deal. We were finding loons on the points down there, and that was one of our locators that we were using to find the points that we're holding fish. So yeah, loons are of utmost importance. And just because you see a loon doesn't mean, okay, well, there's fish on that point. A lot of times a loon is just driving by. He's doing the same thing you're doing when you're running around looking for fish. You know what I mean? Like a loon and us are really doing a lot of the same stuff, right? That loon is just driving by these points, and he may stick his head down and keep going. And stick his head down and keep going. If he doesn't start diving and coming back up in the same general area, no need to pay attention to him. When you see him go down and then pop back up in the same area and then go down and pop back up in the same general vicinity, that's the juice right there. That's going down right there. Okay. Does that make sense? Herons too, guys. Herons are starting to play a role. The herons are showing, the shad, the bait, everything's getting shallow enough, the herons are starting to play a role. If you see herons, especially multiple herons, 3-4 herons, stacked up in an area, on a point especially, pay attention to that. Pay attention to that.
How low is the lake right now?
6.5.
Yeah.
Last I checked, it was 6.5
or something like that.
Yeah, I think it got back up after the rain to like, it came up like 0.12, like nothing. I mean, they're letting it out. They're keeping it at 6 foot low till they're done. They're still out there working on dam every day.
Y'all know about how long they're going to be working on it?
Man, it's there's been no official word on that. Been no official word. You hear rumors about this or that, but there's been no official word on it.
I'm pretty sure they got some issues with the bridges too, because I've seen a bunch of them on the bridges, like walking around looking. Well,
they've done some work on some of them already.
Oh, have they?
Yeah.
Oh.
I heard that they said it was going to be about a year before they were done with the dam.
It might be. It might be. Yeah, we just need to prepare ourselves that this is our new lake level for right now. And the reality is, if they don't close it here in the next month, really about 2 weeks, we're not going to get enough rain to fill it up for summer anyway. No. Hey, and guys, it's going to drop some more than summer. It does every year. It drops a foot or two every summer, just from evaporation alone. We're going to be looking at, an 8 foot low lake more than likely come fall if things don't change.
We could see it as low as it was in that drought we had.
7 3/4 foot was how low it was in 2011, which was the all-time low.
Yeah.
That was the all-time low. I've heard a couple guys say something about sometime when it was 10 foot low. All I know is I moved here in 2009, and in 2011, all the word was that was the all-time low for the lake. So if it ever got to 10 foot low, I'm unaware of it, and I don't think it's on record, because the 7 3/4 foot low was supposedly the all-time low for the lake after it had reached full flow. So that's as low as we've ever been, and that's a lot on Lake Fork. I think a lot of guys from other parts of the world, even as close as, like, say, Fort Worth, they don't understand that 6 foot low is a big deal on Lake Fork, because they're looking at lakes out there that get 20 foot low, and vertically it's 20 feet, but horizontally it's 50 yards. 6 foot low horizontally at places out here, is
150 yards.
half a mile. You know, like it's in the backs of creeks, it's half a mile in places. It's a flat lake. We're in flat ground out here for the most part, and so 6 foot low. I mean, you just think about 6 foot low. If the water came up that curb right there, 6 foot low, the water would be about right there where my truck is. You know, I mean, that's a whole lot of land, surface acre wise, that we're losing. So, yeah, 8 foot low is going to be even more. Don't get too down in the mouth about it. Does it make navigation sketchy at best? Yeah, it does. Navigation becomes a problem out here right now. And that navigation is a real problem out here right now. And I'm doing everything I can to get something done to help you guys with that. You know, we've got boat lanes chips, and Lance Vick has been, you know, the pioneer of that and done a great job at it for years. And I don't want to take anything away from Lance Vick and what he's done with helping people navigate this lake, because he has done a great job. Stephen Fothery came out with a chip that I think was pretty darn solid, pretty good, and opened up some new areas of the lake. The problem with all of those is you don't know when the lake gets too low to run them. There's nothing on the product that tells you you can run this lane to this depth, you know? And so that's when we're working on our boat lanes chip, and we're trying to make it where, okay, now these are the lanes I'm running at 6 foot low, and then when we get to 3 foot low, now we've got the whole lake opened up. Because I've went around and idled to every corner of this lake multiple times at this point, and so the boat lanes chip that we got for Lawrence, pre-order is available. I know some of y'all here tonight have already pre-ordered it. I know you have, Gary. When we get to 3 foot low, you will literally have lanes to, if there's a possible way to run to that corner, you're going to have a lane. I wish I would have brought my boat. I wish I had my boat with me still. I could show you guys on my graph
Yeah,
what I was
the
on.
picture you posted. That was pretty
Yeah, and that don't even, I mean, that doesn't even show half of the detail.
It's got all these waypoints on it.
Now right now I cleared them out to build this chip. So I cleared all my lanes out and put them on an SD, all my waypoints out and put them on a SD card to build this chip. Yeah.
How long y'all think for Hummingbird?
Man, we don't know right now. We're having some issues with conversion.
Gotcha.
Hummingbird limits the amount of trails and the amount of data point entries you can have on your trails. And we've put so many trails on the lake, we're at like 30-something thousand points of data on the trails.
Dang. That's a lot.
Yeah, there's trails everywhere, bro, like everywhere. Like, and I tried to build those lanes from a perspective of, well, what if I wanted to fish over there? I may never want to fish there, but you might. If you want to fish over there and there's a way to get there, we made a trail. You know?
Well, whenever you get Hummingbird, I'll be getting one.
Yeah, we've got to figure that out. That's a tough deal. We've got to go back and retrace all those trails and make them less trails and less points of data entry. So it's a deal that I actually started doing it yesterday, and then had a technical issue with my graph that wouldn't allow me to do it the way I was wanting to do it. So I had to wipe out 2 days worth of work this morning. So I was pretty upset about that. So, yeah. What else? Anything about fishing? Swim baits? I figured we'd have more questions about swim baits. Everybody likes to talk about big swim baits usually.
So you just fishing them slow, just kind of
Thank
slow
you.
rolling them?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you very much for asking that. Yeah, that's why I'm picking line throughs and glide baits right now, guys. Those are the two that we can fish extremely slow, and they'll ride high in the water column because we're fishing shallow. So if you throw a weighted swim bait or a jig head swim bait or a top hook swim bait or whatever, you know, that bait is going to get down in the water column more at the speed I'm wanting to fish it. So with a line through, I almost can't fish slow enough to fish. I'm telling you, for me, fishing line through is hard because you have to fish it so slow for it to not be waking. And in those waves, you got to let it get down there. If it's waking, even close to waking, it's going to not run right and come out surface. You're not going to get bit. One key thing on swim bait fishing is making long casts. These fish will follow a swim bait for a long time before they commit to it and bite it sometimes. So you got to make a long cast. Well, if your swim bait's popping up out of the surface every so often, that fish is going to quit following it. He's not going to end up committing and biting it, so you're not going to catch him. So I have a hard time, honestly, fishing line throughs. I have to force myself to just, creep it, dude. It's so slow. Glide baits, same thing. You got to creep it. With a glide bait, it's a little easier to keep track of that because you can see your line do this. Like you can see your line go back and forth and wiggle. That glide bait swims like this, right? So you can actually watch your line where it goes in the water and see it doing this. So I can tell if I'm doing it like this or if I can tell if I'm doing it like this. And what I want to do is go with the slow speed. And what I'll do is I'll wind that glide bait anywhere from 6 or 7 up to 10 or 12 times rotations, and then twitch. Hard twitches. Because that glide bait will go like this, and that fish will get behind it and be following it, and you go boom, boom. And when it does that, that fish keeps moving forward and he almost runs into it. And at that point, he's either going to knock the fire out of it or he's going to turn and run. If he turns and runs, he was never going to commit and bite anyway. Don't worry about it. So I'll run 6 to 10 or 12 rotations of the reel and then 2 hard twitches. Bam, bam. And play with each glide bait that you get right in front of the boat where you can see it to see how hard you need to twitch it. What you're wanting it to do is go left, right, hard. And it'll go left and then glide to the right when you do that way far. Some of them will even turn all the way around and come back at the fish. A lot of them will. So play with that when you first get them. But yeah, slow, very, very slow. What else? Boy, done got quiet out here. This whole time we've been talking about everything's been noisy, cars been coming, now it's quiet.
So are you using light colors?
Yeah, so we passed that around, those swim baits around. And those are olive shad and light hitch. I think the 2 felons are olive shad. That's a good color right now because you see how pale the belly is on that? I don't know if that's showing up on camera, but you see how pale the belly was on that bait? Did y'all notice that? Yeah. White. The shad are pale right now. The water gets churned up on these points. We want to throw whitish colored baits. Glide baits, I'm throwing a solid white draw from 6 cents. That's the glide bait I'm using, is a draw from 6 cents. And it's like solid white with a chartreuse stripe on the belly. I'm throwing these pale colored baits. I'm even really primarily on line through, I'm throwing pearl white. It's just a bright pearl white with red eyes is what I'm throwing on my line throughs right now. Now, later in the year, the water continues to clear up a little bit. I do love olive shad and I love light hitch, these 2 colors right here. What else?
You throwing lay rig in it?
Man, I'm not, but I don't think that's the worst idea I've heard, you know? I don't think it's the worst. It's probably a really good idea, as cold as the water still is.
Like, I was throwing one semi-regularly up until about 2 weeks ago, and it just started to die off. I mean, it never really got fired up for me. I mean, you would have a lot more followers, and every once in a while you'd have one swipe at it, but like it finally got to the point where like you could pull them up, they get about halfway to your bait, and then they just turn and go right back down. For me anyhow. And then,
on live scope?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like you sit there and just watch them and watch them and watch them, and they would either track that sucker all the way right to the bottom of your boat, and it didn't matter how many times you twitched it, if you just kind of killed it and just let it glide, they would just watch it and they just swim off. Absolutely run like hell from a jerkbait, for me anyhow. And it was like, I get a jerkbait within 50 feet of a fish, it is off the screen.
And I know you like throwing a jerkbait, that probably hurt your feelings, didn't it?
It's very aggravating, because I'll spend way too much time out there chasing a group of them out there running around on a point or something, and I found a lot of big fish cruising down the creek channels, like way back up in the creeks.
Yeah.
But they're the same thing. They almost act like big bedfish, but worse. Like sometimes
bedfish with no anchor to hold them in that area.
Exactly.
Right,
like so, if you move them a little bit, but they don't commit all the way, then like unless you like pay attention the whole time and try to follow that fish, and still a lot of times they'll just keep on going, and hell, they'll swim to the other damn side.
I think that that's what we talked about. There's always a lull before the storm. I think those fish, those early movers, we always focus on in the wintertime because those are the ones that are the most easily accessible. And then right before they spawn, they get funky, man. They get to where they just don't hardly bite at all,
Yeah, and I think I 95% blame the weather. It's like the inconsistency.
We've definitely elongated the holding pattern.
Well, that, and we're like so far behind and ass backwards from last year this time. We were a foot high, and we were in the 60 degrees pretty regular. You know?
No doubt.
So, I mean, I think...
Yeah, but this... what's funny? Facebook memories suck, y'all. Y'all know that? I hate Facebook memories. Because Facebook memories pop up in your notifications on Facebook, and then you're like, dude, we should be bed fishing right now.
It was green on last year. Like, I've got pictures of fishing on bed.
It don't matter. It don't matter what it was last year. We got to fish the conditions. This year, like, Facebook memories pop up, you're like, man, maybe I need to run up there to Long Branch and look for them bedfish again. No, you don't. They're not there. They're not there. It's 55 degrees in Long Branch 2 weeks ago. Like, you don't need to go looking for bedfish in there. It's funny, though. Facebook memories pop up, and being here as long as I have, I've got quite a few years of some really good Facebook memories right now. Like this time of year, March 20-something on, and it kind of hurts your feelings when it's not that good yet. Yeah. It's not bad. This week has definitely, I feel like the lake has started to turn the corner this week. As guides, it's a little different because we get to be out here all the time and we get something figured out a little different, even in a tough time, and we catch fish. But what I look at is when the lake's fishing good is when can the guy who has never been here, or the guy who comes here once a month, when can he go out and just go fishing and get bit, like get some bites, catch some quality fish? We've kind of got there this week, like where it's just kind of, you just go fishing and you can get some quality bites now. Kind of doing just normal, go down the bank, fish a pocket, throw a Cinco, you know, you can kind of get some quality bites doing it now.
It's not fast and furious by any means. I mean, it's a slow grind.
It's getting there. It's not there all the way, but it's getting there now. And so that's good. You know, that tells me the fish are tired of waiting on the weather to develop, and they're going to go on and start doing their thing regardless. Like if we were to get another hard cold front next week, I don't think it's going to slow these fish down.
No,
I think at this point they're just going to go ahead and do their thing. You know?
I wouldn't be surprised because I think it's supposed to stay over 80 at least till about Monday. It's
supposed to be pretty warm this week.
Yeah, and you know, I figure by the end of the weekend, you'll see some fish start to pull up. I don't know if you'll be able to watch them and see them, but I think some fish will get really shallow this week.
I think you'll be able to find. I think you'll be able to visually see some bedfish come Sunday. I think if you're in the right area. I mean, if you're going to fish the shallow pocket deal, I would every once in a while make a run down the bank and just look. You know, get to where you can barely see the bottom and look from there in and just take a look, because I do think there's fish pulling up today.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be more fish pulling up tomorrow and more fish pulling up Sunday. And that's why, as good as the shallow point deal can be, I'm not so sure that that's the way. You know, if I was going into this tournament to fish it as you know, one of the participants, I would honestly be torn right now on what to do, because the shallow point deal has been the better deal for me. Clearly been the better deal, better quality fish, more fish, all that good stuff. But by Sunday, I think that going in the spawning areas is probably going to be the better deal.
Yeah.
I think there's still going to be fish that caught on the shallow points, you know, and honestly, the fish that wins it's probably going to come out there. You know, the 11 pounder, the 12 pounder, whatever wins it, probably going to come out there on one of those staging points. But I think I could be more consistent and have a better chance of making money, and I could catch a giant in the shallow pockets come Sunday.
See, and like, you know, I feel like as the day went on, I thought about it more. I think we had some fresh fish pull up overnight because it didn't get it still got cold. The water temperature where I was going didn't drop.
Right.
You know, I mean, like it dropped maybe a degree from what it had been the past couple of days.
I noticed that too today.
So like those fish didn't go anywhere, you know, and I think some fresh ones
Yeah, the water temps climbed yesterday pretty good on the lake and kind of went from mid-50s to upper 50s on the main lake.
And I think it was like 55, 56 when I launched this morning, but I mean, it was
on the main lake. Right?
Yeah,
and it got up to like 58. 57, 58 on the main lake yesterday, so from what I saw. So it didn't drop much. And then obviously it climbed a lot today. The water temp climbed a lot today.
I saw 64, 65.
And it's going to climb tomorrow. And then Saturday night going into Sunday, it's not even going to get very cold.
Yeah, it's like 65 low.
I mean, all that tells me that these fish, I mean, and they've been waiting. I mean, they've been waiting for a month, guys. Like, they've been waiting and waiting and waiting. Like, these fish are about to sprint to the bank.
All my bigger fish, I'd say.
They should.
They're all ready to pop.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're about to burst.
We might see a really big one get caught, because you could see a 24-inch fish, a 24.5-inch fish that weighs 13 pounds right now. Because some of these fish are so fat. Like, it's a very realistic thing to find a 24.5-inch fish that weighs 13 pounds on this lake right now. You're going to see some double digits. If we catch any overs at all, they're probably mostly going to be all pretty much double-digit fish.
Yeah.
Because the fish in general, the average fish is so fat right now out here.
Yeah.
And have been all winter really. The lake being low, all that did was condense everything, and it probably made it easier on those bass to eat the shad and hunt the shad. And so those bass have been fat ever since December.
Yeah.
They really have been
they've
thick.
been really healthy.
And you can tell they're really eating good, because they're not just got a blowed out belly and they're just a normal looking fish. Like, they're fat over the back, they're fat in the tail, like they are thick, and they weigh a lot right now.
Yeah.
I've had some guys this winter catch some fish, and they're like, everybody, a lot of guide customers show up and go, man, I really want to catch my PB. That's what I'm trying to do, try to catch my PB by fishing with you. Like, no pressure, right?
Yeah.
No pressure, Mr. Guide.
At least 3.
I've only been fishing for 30 years, and I'm expecting you today to put me on the biggest one of my life. No. But we caught many fish this year. When we get them in the boat, and they've told me what their PB is because they're wanting to break it. And we get that fish in the boat, I'm like, man, that ain't it.
Yeah.
That ain't it. And then they're like, well, let's weigh it. And we weigh it, and I'll be damned, it's their new people. You know, like a guy's like, I need, 7 pounder or whatever. And we pull in boat, I'm like, well, that's a heavy 5 or a 6. And we put it on scale, it's sucker weighs 7, dude.
Yeah.
I'm normally pretty accurate at guessing weights, but this year on fork, I've been guessing light, all year, because the fish are so thick. What else?
Main lake points on the shallow.
Yeah, main lake points at the mouths of spawning areas or creeks. So main lake points at the mouths of a creek arm where fish spawn all up and down it, or points in front of isolated spawning areas. Like you can have these smaller pockets on the main lake where fish will spawn, and you can fish points on those. It's just wherever if you fish Lake Fork in the past and you know where fish traditionally spawn, the points at the mouth of that are muddy. Those are the best ones. And then amongst those, the ones the wind's blowing right on. Are we gonna have any wind over the weekend? We didn't have any today.
Yeah. I think Sunday is supposed to blow 10 or 15. So
Perfect.
I mean, like
10 to
it'll be a
15
good wind.
10 to 15 is the best wind. That's the perfect wind for this deal.
Oh, actually, tomorrow's 5 to 10.
Yeah, so tomorrow will be a little light, but Sunday will be blowing 10 to 15. That's the perfect wind for the shallow
I think
point
the
deal.
types of points get overlooked. You just can't go to any of them. Or for me,
Come
like,
on, talk about it.
I mean, like you got to have a harder bottom composition.
Gotta have hard spots.
You know what I mean, like them. I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of good looking ones, but they ain't nothing but sand. It's just sand and a few sticks. Those fish don't want to hold, or for me, they don't hold on that.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, if it's got a really good drop, I'll stop and I'll kind of scan around just to see, if you find like that one unicorn out there. But most of the time, they got a little bit of shell, a little bit of rock on them, or just those hard. You can just tell it looks like red clay concrete almost. They're just so hard.
That red clay, and you can really see with the lake being down, you can learn a lot by looking at the stuff that's out of the water right now. And you look at the areas that we traditionally fish these shallow points at, like everybody saw Lee catch 42 pounds in the Elite Series last year. Go look at that point. Go look at that point. There's some hard. And look at the points all around there.
Yeah,
Where
it's a
Patrick
house
was fishing.
foundation.
And there's a house foundation on it, and even up the point from that house
Bunch of
foundation,
shell.
it's that hard clay with scattered shell. That's what it is. And it's scattered dead shell at this point, because the water's down. But it's scattered shell. It's hard clay. In areas, it's rock. The one right across from that's right by Hideaway is like solid chunk rock all up and down that sucker, if you go look at it right now. And that's a great point. And you go to these points we traditionally fish, and all of them, almost every one of them that I've seen has rock on them. I did not know that, I would have sworn up and down and lost all my money betting that Lake Fork had that much rock in it. But there, on these shallow points, over the years as the water washes over those high spots, there's rock that's been exposed, guys, and there's a lot of rock on these shallow points. A lot more than I ever would have thought.
There's some big rocks out there, too.
Yeah, let's not get confused about the term shell bed, and I know some of y'all are going to laugh when I say that, but I've always held this view on it, no matter who was sitting beside me, and I've had this discussion with them back in the day. It ain't an oyster reef, guys. If it's an oyster reef, go point to one on dry land. They dropped this lake from 3 foot to 6 foot in like a couple weeks. If there was an oyster reef out there, them oyster reefs would have got stranded on land when that happened. There's not one out there that you can find. This is hard spots, it's rock, it's clay. Shell is there at times, mostly dead shell.
Yeah.
Live shell does exist in this lake. I've had them bite the shank of my hook and reeled them in. They exist, but that is not the primary source. You don't have to have a ton of shell on a spot or a shell bed, so to speak, for it to be a good spot to fish out here. It just needs to be hard. It's gonna feel like shell when you're dragging over that rock or that washed out clay that's hard as a rock. It's gonna feel clunky and chunky. It goes back to what I used to say 10 years ago, 12 years ago when I started fishing this lake and I didn't know anything about what was down there. I used to just always tell my buddies I was looking for the crunch. And all I'm looking for is when I drag that Carolina rig over that point, part of it feels like I'm dragging it across this grass, and part of it feels like I'm dragging it across that right there, that rock in that driveway or whatever that is. Like it just gets crunchy feeling like. It goes from just straight slick dragging across to tunk, 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 when you're dragging your Carolina rig across. Just those hard spots are the deal. Another reason that makes Carolina rig so effective is without a doubt when you're in the sweet spot on that point. Because you can feel that hard spot when you're dragging that 1 ounce Carolina rig in shallow water. There ain't no doubt about it. Right, J-Bo?
Oh yeah.
You can feel the sweet spot with that big weight.
110 freaking percent.
I mean, anybody that's never fished can tell the difference on that. So
Feels exactly like the freaking Walmart parking lot.
it's what if it I think that was a good analogy right there. I think that was a good analogy right there. If I was standing over there and threw my Carolina rig right here and dragged it across this
It's
grass,
gonna be mud.
and then I
You're
hit
gonna
that
feel it.
rock, That's what it feels like. It's exactly what it feels like. Yep.
Don't even start.
I feel like we're missing a joke over here. These boys are too young. I don't trust none of them.
Being C Sky, y'all don't mind it.
Yeah, that's right. Any more questions tonight? Yes, sir.
Besides the crappie tournament, what else is going on tomorrow?
Well, a lot of pre-fishing for Megabass, I know. You know, anytime we have Megabass, it's always on Sunday. They give away $10,000 every hour to the winner of the hour. I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, they're giving away a lot of money. People come in from all across the country to fish this
I was thinking
event.
there was another big bass tournament or something.
There probably is.
You got JC Outdoors.
JC Outdoors Media, they're here almost every weekend. One of them is here every weekend, it seems like, this time of year. That's just Lake Fort. Having 2 to 4 or 5 tournaments a weekend in March, April, May, and even June is just kind of what you're going to get. There's always a tournament out here on the weekends this time of year, and almost always multiples.
Yeah.
And it's not Lake Fork exclusive. We're like that here. Rayburn ain't no different.
Rayburn's
Toledo
bad.
ain't no different. Ivy's kind of getting that way
Yeah.
now, you know, like it just,
Especially after this past
yeah, if you get a big fish reputation, people want to fish their tournaments there. That's the way it is.
Shit, you can't find a parking spot at Ivy. The last couple of pictures I've seen, them boys was parking out almost to the highway.
I don't blame them, man. Look at what it's done. Look at what it's done. It's been unbelievable, man. It's been unbelievable. I'm not sure what they got going on in the water out there, but they dang sure removed it when we went.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we missed it by like a week.
I know. We went in December, and they were like transitioning from fall to winter out in Southwest Texas or wherever we were. And we caught some quality fish and had a great time. One thing I like about Ivy, even when it's fishing tough, you catch fish.
Yeah.
Hey, when this lake fish is tough, you don't catch it like you
don't
just
catch
catch a few a day. Like on Ivy, we were still able to go out with a couple days, only not knowing anything about the lake, being there for a couple days. We were able to go out and pattern the fish and consistently get bit. You know, after being there for a day, even though it was fishing by Ivy standards extremely tough.
Yeah.
Nobody was catching big fish when we were there.
No.
For a while when we were there, nobody
No.
caught any big ones.
Yeah, well, I think about a week before we showed up, someone weighed in like a 10 something, but
Here's the problem. Well, yeah, one guy. Here's the problem though. When I get to the time that Ivy gets good, man, I like fishing in the wintertime on Lake Fork. And many of you guys probably watched a couple of those jig videos that we made. But guys, it was literally, I went over a month, month and a half, where we had 2 fish in my boat for a month and a half that were under 4 pounds. Like for real, dude. Like every day we went out, every time we swung on one, it was 4 pounds and bigger. And if I can go out there and get 8 or 10 bites a day with those kind of weights, I'm not going anywhere else. I don't care how good it is somewhere else. Like I'll go out there and catch me a couple handfuls of 4 to 8 pounders every day and never stop, never check up, never get tired.
yeah, it's pretty hard to leave a 25-pound bag a day.
And that's kind of what it was. It was 25-pound bag basically every day. It was pretty wild, man.
And I think we're getting close to where it's that time in the spring for to where
That's coming.
like the 20, 25
Yes.
pounds is kind of the norm. If you didn't do that, you didn't catch them very well.
That's
you know?
right. Yeah, you're right. That's about to happen here
It's
again.
really
yeah.
close.
And then it's going to get
I think
that way
probably
on the
the first-
post spawn deal too.
I think probably the first week of April, maybe the second will probably be when it'll finally just
I
just
think
go
that
full bore on the bank.
that new moon in April is going to have a bigger effect than new moons usually do because so many fish did not get to pull in on this full moon. I think there's going to be fish pull up in between, but we've got a new moon coming in about a week,
yeah,
and I think that's going to.
the full moon's the 15th or 16th of April, I think.
Yep. The new moon's coming in about a week, and I think that's going to pull a lot of fish to the bank, much more than a new moon typically does. Hell, I was thinking this thing was going to end 30 minutes in, and here we are an hour in. What's up? Any more questions? Anybody got anything they want to talk about?
3 weeks behind right now.
What's that?
Would you say the spawn's about 3 weeks behind right now? Overall?
That all depends on the year that you're basing it off of, right? You know what I mean? Like some years we're a month and a half behind,
Yeah.
and then some years, we have earlier spawners, a little more early spawners, but the spawn typically doesn't get going in earnest until about March 20th, usually around here. Now, when I say that, I mean usually by March 20th. This is the first year, okay, that I've seen it where by March 20th, you couldn't find bedfish from one end of the lake to the other. Over the last 5 or 6, 7 years, this is the first year that by March 20th, you couldn't find spawners down there in Alligator and the mouth of Little Canyon, all that good stuff. when the water's real clear and everybody loves to sight fish, usually by March 20, there's bed fish down there every year for the last 5 or 6, 7 years. This year, there's not. I mean, there's one every once in a while, but there's really not enough to go looking for. So we are behind. To say we're 3 or 4 weeks behind normal as far as the whole lake spawning cycle goes, I don't know if I can go there yet. I think we're about a week behind, 2 weeks maybe. But we're probably going to get fish in those pockets maybe this weekend. And so if that's what I noticed last year. Last year we were behind. We were behind our spawning cycle last year too, until we got to about March 17th, 18th.
Yeah.
And by the time we got to the 20th, we caught up. In a matter of days, we caught up. So even though we were a couple weeks behind in early March, by the time we hit March 20th, the whole lake caught up and everybody started spawning. That could happen again over the next week, where we've been delayed. We've been 2 or 3 weeks behind, but the whole lake is only about a week behind, and it could all catch up within a week, and then we're only going to be a week late. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And I think this weekend it'll go down. I think Monday and Tuesday will be better than Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, they're going to pull in.
Because your lows are still in the mid-60s, and you've got, I wouldn't say a bad cold front, you've got a 75-degree cloudy, slightly rainy day on Tuesday.
Now, next week's going to be great.
With
some wind.
Next week's going to be great.
Yeah.
Next week should be really, really good.
Yeah, if it's like this tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
the temperature gets up.
Maybe this summer. Yeah, because there's already some that actually sprouted up during the cold months, which makes no sense to me. But there is a couple patches of coontail that I've seen that sprouted up while we've been cold, out of nothing. Lower lake levels, no grass in the lake, and it sprouted up during the cold time of year. So that tells me that some of that soil down there that was too deep to get the light penetration to grow the grass is probably holding some dormant grass that's been waiting. And so I do think that we'll see some grass growth. By the time we get to fall, you'll have some grass growth across the lake. We'll see. It'll be interesting. It might pop up in new places. Last time we did this, it popped up. All the pockets across from Oak Ridge and the Minute Bucket had it. Hydrilla. When the lake was low, all the pockets across from Oak Ridge and the Minute Bucket popped hydrilla up last time. So instead of it being in the obvious areas up the lake, we might see some random grass growth scattered throughout the lake. And then if we can somehow manage, which this ain't gonna happen in Texas probably, but if we somehow manage to get a slow rise when we do come back up, that grass that pops up while it's low could spread, and we could potentially, that's part of the new lake syndrome we talk about, guys. But a slow rise is a key component to that, because if you get vegetation growing at 6 foot low and it jumps from 6 foot low to full pull in a week, all that grass is dead because there's not enough light penetration to spread it, and then you're starting over again, right? So everybody just pray for a slow rise when it does come back up, because whatever grass growth we get at 6 foot low, if we get a slow rise, it should spread. And if we do that, with then replenish nutrients on the bank, if the lake stays low for more than a year, then you could really see something happen with the grass, and it bounce back, and we have, at least for a few years, have really good vegetation in the lake like we used to. But it could potentially happen, and it could, like I said, it could only grow a little bit, the lake could jump in a week, and then we could have no grass in the lake. It could go either way. It's not Texas Parks and Wildlife spraying it. Does everybody realize when the grass went out of the lake 10 years ago, it had nothing to do with spraying? There was no spraying at that time. I think Texas Parks and Wildlife gets a bad rap on that one. The lake dropped to 7 3/4 foot low in 2011, and then while it dropped that low, we had 3 nights in a row that never got below freezing. So what happened was you had grass out to about 8 foot, 8.5 foot deep in a lot of areas of Lake Fork, like a lot of areas of Lake Fork back then. The lake drops to 7 3/4 foot low. Well, where's the grass at? In a foot of water. Well, everybody knows in the wintertime that really shallow grass dies. In the wintertime, you always get those bare banks on the inside because it kills the grass. And then the grass that's in 3 or 4 or 5 foot of water lives through the winter, right? We've all seen that. Well, when all the grass is in a foot of water or less, and then you get 3 nights in a row below freezing, kills all the grass. So the lake drop killed most of the grass. The freeze killed the rest of the grass, and there was not a stitch in Lake Fork after the drought in 2011. And everybody was accusing Texas Parks and Wildlife, still do to this day, accuse Texas Parks and Wildlife of spraying the grass that we used to have in 2010. Mother Nature killed that grass, right? Mother Nature killed that grass. And then when we came back up in 15, we had some grass while it was low, but again, we came up too fast. When we came up, and it got rid of the grass, then we had to start over again. these lakes cycle, guys. Vegetation, nutrients, bait fish, bass, populations, it all cycles in these lakes, all of it. Okay, it all goes up and down. The one thing that we know here at Lake Fork that we're so fortunate to have, and there's really not a great explanation for this, is our cycles, like our lows, we still catch giants consistently out here. For whatever reason, the size of the fish in this lake, even when it's not fishing at the best, is like nowhere else. Ivy's killing it right now.
But how long is it gonna last?
But if you fished Ivy 5 years ago, you'd have been like, that's the Dead Sea. Right? Falcon. Go fish Falcon right now. Tell me how great Falcon is. I dare you. Hey, Falcon is dog duty right now. I mean, the guides on Falcon are literally taking a chance for their life going into cartel country to fish Sugar Lake because Falcon's so bad. That's true. That's real. I mean, not that a big fish doesn't come out of Falcon every once in a while, but I mean, it's for the normal guy to go down there and fish Falcon, it's like fishing the Dead Sea. They all cycle. They all cycle. Toledo Bend, Rayburn, all of them cycle. The difference is with Fork, when it down cycles, we still catch giants out here consistently. For whatever reason, you know, the only thing I can point to say that makes any sense, it's the only lake this size that doesn't have a river. So it doesn't have as much flow coming through it and out of it, right? And in my opinion, maybe that makes us hold more nutrients in the lake, makes the bait fish population, the algae, the plankton population more healthy because we're not ripping as much nutrients out of the lake constantly. So maybe that's it. But other than that, I don't have any explanations for it. We just consistently catch big ones here. That's why it's the goat lake, man. Despite what Ivy's done, this is the goat lake. I mean, there's never been a lake that's kicked out the number of big fish that this lake has. And don't get me wrong, other lakes have as big a fish at times. Ivy's better than Fork right now, boys. It sure is. But 3 years from now, will it be? Probably not. If you look at the data, probably not. This lake will still be good.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Anything else? You ready to go eat some steak and drink some whiskey? Huh? Some of y'all are here to look at it. He's like, now we're talking. Now we're talking. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for, huh? Medium rare, absolutely. Hey, man, if you come to my house and you ask me to cook one medium well or well, I'm gonna ask you to leave. Like,
Politely yet firmly.
thank you guys for joining us, and y'all go shop at Lake Fork Marine. Thank y'all.